that it gets published, how many data analysts look at it for accuracy? What are the benchmarks for determining if you have reduced racial bias, and how do you know if your policing and reform strategies are meeting the goals of the reform movement? Can you share how you will measure success? To the Public Safety Committee, what are you doing besides asking the Commissioner to report at this hearing to hold the department accountable? Do you have a data analyst to evaluate his reporting? We're not talking about a small town department here. We're talking about one of the largest in the country and an agency that receives more funding than almost every other agency. And the fact that you are allowing amateur data reporting and analysis with no benchmark requirements is outrageous. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Judy Gardner.
I'm just going to make this short and sweet. Thank you for having this hearing. The lack of transparency and accountability of the Nassau County Police Department is really unacceptable. What is your plan? I have lived on Long Island for over 50 years, and I need to see improvement. What is your plan? It is not acceptable to leave statistics out of reports and not let the citizens know what is going on in policing. You need to do much, much better. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Cirillo. I apologize if I said it wrong.
That was good. Thanks. Good morning, dear members of the Public Safety Committee. Thank you again for inviting public testimony at today's meeting. The following information and questions represent the concern of Long Island United to transform policing and community safety, the working group on mental health crisis response. Since 2020, our group has been helping to identify solutions and strategies to improve responses to mental health crises in our communities. We authored the Mental Health Crisis Response portion of the People's Plan in 2021. The Nassau County Police Department developed a plan in response to the Governor's executive order. We have been trying to monitor how the department has implemented their proposed mental health crisis reforms. We've reached out to Commissioner Ryder several times, and he's put us in touch with various members of the department, including Detective LeBrun. Despite receiving email responses from the Nassau County that the Nassau County Police Department was interested in setting up a meeting, no date was ever set, and requests for meetings or calls continue to be left vague. Our work group was given only a reiteration of the data from the annual reports. After reviewing the limited and incomplete data, we are left with many unanswered questions and continue to reach out to the Nassau County Police Department for clarification and additional information. We're especially concerned about the following. One of the primary goals of the Nassau County Police Department's 2021 reform plan was to connect more people in crisis with trained mental health workers via the mobile crisis team. The most recent data, however, only 20% of the calls designated as related to mental health involve the mobile crisis team in any way, only 20%. In what way is the mobile crisis team involved, and what are the outcomes? Why are the remaining 80% receiving only an armed police response? The recent data also shows that 95% of mentally aided calls receive transport to hospital emergency departments. Commissioner Ryder and former Commissioner of Human Services McCummings, during their 2020 pilot study, identified excessive reliance on the ER as costly and ineffective. They noted that hospital transport too often led to a release back to the streets without any long-term intervention or care. And yet 3 years later, nothing has changed. I'd like to see change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pearl Jacobs?
Good morning, all. Pearl Jacobs, Uniondale. I'm not coming here with all the data. I'm just coming here to elaborate on a few things and share my partnership with the Nassau County Police Department. I would first like to thank Commissioner Ryder for his excellent leadership and the men and women of the Nassau County Police Department for their service and protection to the residents of Nassau County. Regarding police reform, there are 4 major issues in policing: police recruitment and retention, police accountability, embracing technological advancements in law enforcement, and data-driven crime prevention. Our Nassau County Police Department is working diligently to recruit diverse candidates. How do I know? Because they continue to outreach to community leaders, as myself, and other organizations in my community and our surrounding communities, minority communities, in their recruitment efforts. And they also engage our youth in police and community activities right at the new Nassau County Police Department headquarters. Addressing police accountability. Yes, our police, just like everyone, should be held accountable for their actions, and every organization should be subject to oversight, including my civic association, including our elected officials. I am confident that police accountability is stressed in the Nassau County Police Department training curriculum. Data-driven crime prevention plays a huge role in reducing crime. I had the opportunity to observe the functions of our Nassau County Police Department's intel data analysis. They do an excellent job in helping to get ahead of crime and mitigating criminal activity. Cultural sensitivity training, Nassau County Police Department engages with our civic associations. We have total access to our POP officers. We have quarterly meetings with our commanding officer of the 1st Precinct, Inspector Guerra, who does a fantastic job engaging, and he puts community outreach as a priority. Community relations, de-escalation training, implicit bias training, body-worn cameras. They do all of this. Our Nassau County police officers must demonstrate respect, but respect goes both ways. I have seen confrontations myself where a police officer has pulled over a car and they refuse to wind down their window, or they're giving the officer a hard time because they were going 85 miles an hour down the street, okay? It's a collaborative effort. Legislative support is needed. Increase in traffic accidents and fatalities, more technology is required, camera technology is required, increased social services for drug abuse, addiction, fentanyl, opioids, mental illness, upticks, and suicides. These are just a small list of what officers have to deal with on a daily basis. 1 minute, please. Let's not forget that they too are human. These are most challenging times for our police. It's a collaborative effort. Let's come together as a community, as our elected officials. Let's come together with our police to help them protect us. And thank you again.
And as we wait for Mr. Brewington, We did receive 2 emails from residents as well in regard to the police reform plan hearing, and we will incorporate them into the minutes. Okay, I'll hand them to you later. All right, Karen. Mr. Brewington, we're ready for you. Yeah, we anticipated you.
Good morning, all. So good to see our elected officials as you are getting ready for your Christmas holiday. I bring you greetings from a number of members of the community, but particularly those individuals that find themselves as advocates in the area of policing, public safety, and transparency. I stand before you this morning to raise 2 major issues. First, the issue of responsiveness. There have been a number of organizations, Long Island United, UJPLI, and LifePA, Long Island Advocates for Police Accountability, that have repeatedly written to both the county executive and Commissioner Ryder, asking for responses to questions, asking for responses for a conversation, and over the past year, the response has been 0. And I'm raising that as an issue because if indeed, as we went through after the death of George Floyd, a discussion about the need for conversation, a need for accountability, a need for transparency, the failure to even correspond, respond, and speak to individuals is a problem. Nassau County Police Department is not without fault. It also is not without praise. It has the ability to be a top shelf quality police department in the United States, but instead what it has done is done what it oftentimes is referred to as sticking your head in the sand when it comes to asking for requests for response. And the only problem that exists when you stick your head in the sand is that only one thing is sticking up. And when that happens, you oftentimes then feel as though someone's picking on you because you're getting kicked in the rear end. There's no interest in wanting to do that. There is an interest of wanting to work together. We know that right now, the Nassau County Police Department and the County of Nassau have been hit with court orders. In the matter of Newsday LLC versus Nassau County Police Department, and I'll put the CIV number just so we have it on Westlaw for the lawyers up there that would like to look it up. Westlaw, it's 2023 WL 8102717. That's the citation. And if you need, I have a copy for you, Madam Chair. But the importance of that is that Nassau County has had to be sued for the release of information about individuals that are public employees, those being police officers, those individuals who are employed and have disciplinary and background concerns. Was that my time, by the way? I heard a ding. Okay, it was Mr. Pulitzer was just waving at me. So, however, when it comes to transparency, and that's one of the terms I mentioned, it is so important for the public to know what is happening with regard to the people that carry guns on our streets, that have the impact of dealing with our children on an everyday basis. And Nassau County Police Department, and those representing the county have consistently refused to provide all the details concerning disciplinary background, personnel background. And by the way, if you have an employee, and all of you have worked in different industry, but if you had an employee that had a serious disciplinary issue, one of the things is that those people that are responsible for overseeing them, you would want to make sure that those individuals have that information. That has not been the mentality of the Nassau County Police Department nor the County of Nassau. With regard to the issues of accountability, one of the things that we are raising and have continued to raise is that Nassau County, in its internal affairs investigation process, has failed us. And when I say failed us, they've failed us, that being the community, with regard to their failure to appropriately investigate and fully deal with the issues of discipline of officers that need it. And it's not just punitive. We're talking about restorative. We're talking about making sure that officers who may have problems, and we know that they see the underbelly of society, right? They get an opportunity to see what's wrong, and every day they are inundated and inundated. And I'll just tell you, none of these fine individuals that are dressed in blue here can tell me that after their first 3 years on the job that they were the same people that they were when they came on. And that's why it's so necessary with regard to accountability that there be something that is mandated by safety, by public safety, and you individuals, that after an officer is on the job for 3 years, that they go back for a psychological evaluation, that they go and try and get some help and support, that they go to a situation where after they've seen dead bodies and where they've seen people shot and when they've been cussed out on the street, as you do, right? You get cussed out, yes? Okay, they don't respond to me. That's part of the fact that there's no responsiveness. Part of that is that you cannot be the same person after you get that. And if we don't try to help them, we end up with issues. And I'll just tell you, I know about officer suicides and attempts. I know what's going on, and you do too. It's serious. And when we put our heads under the table and don't deal with it in a real way, what we're going to end up to have is more tragedy for the individuals who are hoping that will care for us in the community, but more so, when it comes down to making the tough decisions, they themselves will not be in a good position psychologically to be able to do that. So one of the things we're suggesting is that you adopt the concept that officers on a regular basis not just go through the psychological evaluation to get into the police department, but that they have psychological support and help during the process. Lastly, right now, there are lawsuits that are pending against the County of Nassau. I know because I'm bringing some of them. But just the other day, in the matter, I think it's Brazil versus the County of Nassau, Nassau County was hit for a $4.5 million verdict. And I'm sure that you're aware of that. Why is that important? Because some of the things that could have happened didn't happen. We did not say what gets inspected gets respected. We didn't inspect the backgrounds of individuals who engaged in excessive force. We didn't deal with the issues of individuals that had the responsibility to be evaluated. I'll be done in 30 seconds. What I'm aiming at here is that there is no them and us. It is just us. And if we don't see all of us being in the same boat, and all our boats then rising together, we then stand in a friction situation where we are in opposition. There is no real interest in having opposition. That's why the letters have gone to the commissioner and the county executive to say, let's sit and talk. But having a year of silence, a year of no responsiveness, a year of being ignored, there can be no expectation except for friction. And that's not what we're looking for. So I thank you for the time. I'm not looking for anybody else to give me their 3 minutes because I used mine up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think, you know, if you have letters, sometimes it's wise to CC us because we were not aware of the requests.
Well, I think I did. I CC'd Mr. Nicolello on at least 2 of them. Okay. And the response was just as deafening.
All right.
I would continue CCing us.
All right.
At least the Public Safety Commission.
How about what
Committee.
I'll do tomorrow, Chairwoman Ford, I will have delivered over to you the copies of the documents that were actually sent back and forth, including the emails. And I can't send you the responses because there are none.
Thank you. Richard Paul.
Peace and blessings. How is everybody doing here today? My name is Richard Paul. I am a youth mentor, community activist, and an interventionist. More specifically, I am the lead interventionist for Strong Youth Nassau University Intervention Program. As a part of my role, I challenge the problematic and often detrimental mind frames in some of our youth that stem from the streets and or systems that weren't created for them to thrive. As a matter of fact, I brought 2 of my young men with me today because a part of that process is introducing them to the community and introducing the community to them in a positive way. One of the main things that I speak to my young people about is accountability. And I'm happy to hear about the things that are transpiring for reform with police officers in Nassau County. But to be perfectly honest and transparent, we're not seeing or sensing that in the community. To be even more transparent, a part of my motivation for being here today is an incident that transpired with me on Tuesday. At the same time, our founder, Sergio Argueta, was in Baldwin, and he pulled over because a group of 5 youth were pulled over out of the vehicle on the sidewalk. At that same time, I was pulled over in Hempstead for what was explained to be a traffic stop, or I quote, you forgot the signal somewhere back there. During the traffic stop, I stopped the vehicle, I put my hands on my steering wheel, I turned the car off, I give the officer my license. The officer comes back with my license, said everything is clean. He asked me, do I mind stepping out of the vehicle? I asked officer, actually I do mind. For what? At that very moment, the officer reached into my vehicle, unlocked my door, and opened the door. And then, at that moment, I stepped out of the vehicle in duress. I'm perplexed. As I am a member of the community, and I've been working diligently in the community for the past 2.5 years. In fact, I had the opportunity to mentor 200 plus youth in the past 2.5 years. I was asked to put my hands on top of the vehicle for a search publicly. With no reason or probable cause, I was then asked to step to the back while I watched my vehicle and my personal bags and belongings ransacked. The officer then came and asked me to open my glove compartment as well as my trunk. I said, sir, he asked me, do I have a problem opening my glove compartment or my trunk? I said, sir, for what? What reason do you have to go into my trunk? The officer completely disregarded everything that I said, walked into my vehicle, opened my trunk himself, and then commenced to ransacking my trunk in public with no probable cause. A few more seconds, please. Once this was finished, the officers told me that I was free to go. I didn't receive a ticket. There was no explanation. To be perfectly honest, I don't even know the name of the officers that pulled me over. I asked one officer his name. While he walked off, he said, Detective Smith. I don't know what precinct these officers come from. The only thing I have is a license plate number because I remember the license plate number. But I come here in the interest of accountability because honestly, I'm confused. And I fear that if it's one of my young people or even other community members who may not know how to navigate a situation like that, it can go from 0 to deadly in a matter of seconds. So I stand here in the interest of accountability, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. And was it a Hempstead police officer that stopped you?
It was in Hempstead. It was detectives. It was 3 detectives. So I don't know what precinct they might. I don't know if they were Nassau County.
They might not
or
have been Nassau County. But all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Ryder, would you like to come up or?
My turn?
It's your turn. Wherever you feel comfortable, please.
I got a microphone for you. So, good morning. Is it still morning? Good afternoon? I'm not sure. I am Police Commissioner Patrick Ryder. Is this on? and here to talk about reform, but I want to address a couple of things that were mentioned. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Brewington for his comments about wellness for our police officers. As you all know, we have a wellness program, our peer support, our wellness program, and of course our Office of Emergency Employee Assistance, which we can mandate employees to go see when we feel that they are in distress or they have some issues that they are dealing with privately or at work. We have one of the best programs probably in the country right now for wellness. And as a matter of fact, it's also being used by the many members of this county. Different agencies now have been coming to us, and many here on the legislative body have been part of that. Talking about the gentleman that was just up, sir, I believe that's in the Hempstead, confines of the Hempstead PD, but we would be happy to take that complaint. Before you leave, Chief Nick Stillman is here from our Professional Standards Bureau, and he will take that complaint. You'll get investigated, and the answer back to you. As far as Sergio Guetta goes, I know Sergio very well. As a matter of fact, I meet with Sergio. I probably met in the house that you talk about with the gentleman that you were here with that for the mentoring program. I was there to help give gifts to their kids at Christmas last year, and again going to do it again with Sergio this year. So there is a lot of transparency and a lot of outreach when it comes to our community. Talking about Operation Natalie, I'm offended by Operation Natalie's comments that were made just a minute ago. We are one of the only counties in this country that is reducing the overdose deaths in this country. We have a five-pronged approach to go out and cure the problems for our kids that are suffering from the addiction of fentanyl. We have reduced it by 30%. That aftercare visit that was spoken about, that aftercare visit is done with care for the family. It's giving them the resources. It's giving them the app that we have on the county that you've all created. And we go above and beyond to make sure they are getting the service that they get. That is not the job. They are 100% right. It is not the job of the police department to go out. That is a social worker. Find me the social worker to go there, and I'll take care of it. I'll step back. But then when the overdoses go up, don't call me. This is what we've been doing, and I'm offended when Susan took that, because that was named after Natalie Chiappi, and I'm personal friends with her father, Vic. I speak every year at the anniversary of that child's death, and again on her birthday. And I speak to the family quite often, like we do to all of our victims. Like our narcotics detectives go out and speak to all of our victims. Are we not supposed to follow up on an investigation so we can find out who the drug dealer was? It's the families that stand with us. All of them have lost their children to fentanyl, that we go, and because of that five-pronged process of education, that's not mentioned today. Awareness, that's not mentioned today. Enforcement, that'll be mentioned today. The aftercare visit, and again, getting them the resources that they need. We do that above and beyond what is asked of law enforcement. If we keep asking law enforcement to not do the things that we do, and give that to somebody else, see if they get done. Because these men and women that stand behind me put their life on their lines every single day to go out and protect these kids, our own kids. We live in this county, and it's one county. The county executives made it very clear that we go out and above for everybody in this county. And when talked about the fact of letters not being answered, that goes at a higher level. And again, the requests that come over and over, again, I can't answer everything that's out here. The lawsuit that was being spoken about, I don't even know what lawsuit that is. And I don't know if that was against one of my police officers. Because we read every lawsuit. I asked counsel, and they're not sure what it is. So again, we try to do what we can for the people here in Nassau County. Nassau County is the safest county in America 3 years in a row. And then we lowered crime in 22. And this year, we are looking at crime is down an additional 6%, 6.5%. Murders, which had a record year low, the lowest in the history of this county's numbers, 98 years of existence of this police department. We hit the lowest number of homicides at 14 last year. We're at 11 right now. When you look at all the major crime numbers, they're down. If you look at robbery others and commercial robberies, the robbery others are street robberies. Street robberies in the communities that we are out there protecting are down again this year by 6% after a record low last year. We're at 211. There's 1.5 million people that live in this county. 211 have been victim of robberies. And most of those robberies are a shoplifter gone bad when they push somebody at the exit when they're going out with that property. That makes it a robbery. When you look at robbery others, that's the commercial robberies in stores. Again, down to 174. There are over 500,000 businesses in this county. We have 174 robberies in those businesses. Assaults are up slightly from 444 to 471. Again, 1.5 million people live in this county. Residential burglaries are down 17% after historic lows last year. We're at 339 right now, down 17%. That is the great work of our burglary pattern team and our detectives that go out and do the follow-up. When you talk, and again, residential burglaries, there are 560,000 homes in this county, and we have less than 211 burglaries. Our business burglaries, when we talk about 600,000 businesses, there's about 508. That is up 27%, and we made a huge arrest in that just recently as of last night. Stolen vehicles, the number one thing that gets all the attention. We have 1,040,000 cars registered in this county. 1,040,000. I got another 10,000 that are in dealerships alone. And we're under 800 at 778, down 15% from last year. 90% of them because people don't lock their car. 90%. Lock your car, and I won't have these stolen cars. Grand larcenies are down 7.67%. And then we get into our total major crime is down 6.59, and total crime is down 0.20%. Now, when you look at some of the crime categories that we also like to address, one of them is shootings. A police officer did not fire his weapon in 2023, this year. Last year, we fired twice. The one when the gentleman on Nassau Road fired into the police car, and 3 inches higher, I got a dead cop. But instead, we got to recognize him, and we never fired back. They fired at us, we never fired back. And then we talk about, the other one was Officer Dobbs in the 7th Squad. Officer Dobbs in the 7th Squad was leaving a residence that he was going to make an arrest in Amityville in the Suffolk precinct, Suffolk County. Officer Dobbs was confronted by a man with a knife. On video, he retreats over 60 yards. Our cop is running away from the man with the knife. He finally gets him to look for a second and stop. The gentleman charges again. The officer fires. He wounds him. The gentleman, we get him medical care. He gets taken. But he still got dragged to a grand jury in Suffolk County. He still got dragged up to the Attorney General's office to be investigated. And he still got looked at by our district attorney's office for doing his job on video. Exactly what we're asking for transparency is the body camera program, which you're going to hear about today. So I'll get into some of my arrest data that is a concern, right? And again, that's why every one of my COs and DCOs are here, because I've had the meetings with them. I've discussed the racial disparity, if you will, in arrest. We know the reasons why in law enforcement. We know that we do our job correctly, and we know why. But when you look at some of the data, and to give you an example, we're working off the demographics from 2020. White population is 55.8. That is down from the last time. Hispanic and Latinos is up to 18.4. That is up. African American is down to 10.6 from 11, I believe. And Asian Pacific is 11.7. Right? And when you look at those numbers, when it comes to arrest data, 32% African Americans are arrested, 28% Latino, and 30% in white. Now, of course, it does not match up to the demographics of this county, right? But let me give you some of the numbers that are concerning to us and why. When we look at our arrest, the largest mall, one of the largest malls in the country is here over in Roosevelt Field. 32% of all of our arrests come from Roosevelt Field. To date, we're at 13,080 arrests to date. 32% come from Roosevelt Field. 12% come from Green Acres Mall. And another smaller percentage, 7%, come from the Broadway Mall. 51% of all of our arrests come from malls. If you want 13,080 people arrested, 9,750 were released, no bail. 1,438 were rearrested again and given no bail. 418 people were arrested and then recharged again and then issued bail. Out of that 9,750, 1,856 continue to make more, commit more crimes here in this county. So 50% of our crime numbers come from the top 10 communities. 62% are residents, 30%, 7% are non-residents. They're asking why I don't do the demographics for the non-residents. Because then am I going to grab the demographics from the city of New York into the math? Because that's where they live. That's where they reside. They commit the crime here. That's why we give it. We're giving a number to give transparency, as they're asking, to explain. 37% of the people we arrest don't live in this county. So they get arrested on places like the border, over in Elmont, right? At the Green Acres Mall, over at Roosevelt Field, at the Broadway Mall. And when you look at the numbers and the complaints that come in, and we've given this number before, when we're talking 911 calls, 59% come from 911 calls. 59% of the time, we are getting called to help the public. Another 14% come from what we call the unknown. That's all of you. That's your constituents that call you and you call me. Or that's the ones that complain to the county executive, and then he calls me. And we go out and we address it. And we go out, and so when you look at that number, 74% of the times that we make an arrest come from people calling for help. Do we not go out and make that enforcement? Do we not go out and make that arrest? I don't know on the 911 call what the caller asked. And someone said before about demographics with Operation Natalie, the 911 calls. Why don't we know the demographics of the 911 call? Because it's illegal for me to ask somebody's race when they're on a phone calling for help. We don't ask them, are you a female black or a male white, or who are you? We don't ask that data, and we don't have that data. We know it from when we make the complaint, and it does go into our P1 system. So when you look at the numbers, that 74% are those calling for help, and we go out and we address it. Again, and then the rest of it comes from enforcement. So when you want to look at things like field interviews or tickets, and I noticed they were not bringing up the summons data. You know why? Because it doesn't work for them right now, all right? The summons data in this county, if you look at it, African Americans receive 21% of the tickets, Latino 24%, white 35%. That's the number of tickets. But if you want to look at field interviews, it's not as good, and I'll admit that. Black is 842, it's number 2. White, 1,018, and Hispanic, 701. It doesn't match the demographics of the county. 74% of the people call us for help. We go and help. We don't ask what the makeup of the person is that we're going to help. When you look at complaint data, I'm going to have Nick Stillman come up and talk about that, use of force. And again, our homicides, our shootings in this county. Homicide by gunshot in this county is 3 this year. It was 4 last year. It was 6 and 21. Sounds like we're going in the right direction. Shooting with injury was 20 and 21, 15 and 22, 9 this year. Shots fired with no injury, 61 and 21, 54 and 22, 36 and 23. And if you look at the totals, 87 shootings in 21, 73 in 22, and 48 in 23. These are the numbers we look at. When you look at mental health, we have gone above and beyond for mental health in this county because of the support we got from this legislative body. 2,332 calls during the period that we're talking about on the data, January to June. 2,332. Transported to the hospital, 2,211. 61 times we had to use some type of force. That's either using the pepper spray, that's either blocking them with the shield, or what's called the loop that we go and we can pin the person in the corner. Nobody, 0 times was anybody hurt. 0. 2,332 times, nobody hurt. Calls to mobile crisis and was answered 177. Mobile crisis involvement 457 times. Before reform, the answer was 0 with mobile crisis. 457, that's almost a quarter of the numbers we're looking at. Well, we call mobile crisis on every single call we get. 911 makes the quick call over. We know Johnny, we're going to talk to him now on the phone. We stay on, and at some point they go, we're good. Johnny's going to get medicated. He's going to be fine. Call is disconnected, report made. If it's escalated by a weapon or a threat of suicide or a gun, obviously we have to respond. We'll call mobile crisis for dual response. They're not always available because they have a big workload. They do a great job. But 457 times they came out and they assisted us. And again, these are the numbers just for the 6 month of the beginning of the year. So at this point, I want to bring up Chief Palmer, our Chief of Department, and he's going to discuss to you about the use of force. Chief, can you please come up? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Merry Christmas and happy holidays to everyone here today.
Chief, if you could sit at the table if you prefer.
It doesn't matter. This is fine.
We're gonna
If
have
you can hear
three
me,
coming
this
up.
is great.
Okay,
He's going to be short.
all right.
Yeah, this will be brief. So I'm just going to briefly go over what our state requirements are for the reporting of use of force, and then I'll talk about what we actually do capture, what we report out to the public, and then what the process is in evaluating those reports. So the reports that we have our officers fill out is a use of force report. It's about 3 pages long. After a whole lot of collaboration many years ago to determine how we can capture just about every possible scenario and keep track of what we're actually doing. So New York State requires us for the following: the display of any chemical agent, any use or deployment of a chemical agent, any brandishing, which is the pointing of a firearm at a person or persons, any use or discharge of that firearm, whether we brandish an electronic control weapon, same thing, use or deploy that same weapon, an impact weapon also, which is a baton, whether we use, deploy that, or even brandish it, which is to point it at a particular person, any use of a chokehold or any other similar restraint was reported immediately to New York State, and any conduct which results in the death or serious bodily injury of another person, that goes and is required to go to New York State. Also for New York State, we report on the age, sex, race, and ethnicity of both the person involved and the officer. That all goes to New York State. So in addition to what we compile for New York State, we actually require our officers to provide the following too. We report on and collect physical force, which we define as any physical strike or instrumental contact with a person, any significant physical contact, anything that restricts their movement of a person. That includes the use of empty hands, any compliance or control, holds or twists, locks, pressure points, taking of a person to a ground, the use of physical force such as kicks, punches, martial art techniques, and again, the term does not include escorting or handcuffing a person with no or minimal resistance. That does not have to go to New York State. We collect that data and we report on that data because we feel it's important. So once that report is actually prepared and sent up the chain, it is evaluated immediately within the command by a patrol supervisor or a DD supervisor. The criteria that they actually use is to determine the objective reasonableness of force used by that officer or that particular detective. And the factors that are involved is the severity of the circumstances that they happen to be facing at the time, the immediacy of the threat or resistance posed by any individual, the potential for injury to all concerned, the knowledge, training, and experience of the officer themselves, and the risk or attempt of the individual to escape, and additional considerations such as age, size, relative strength, skill level, injury, exhaustion, and the number of participants involved. So once that's evaluated at the local level within the command, it goes up to the commanding officer of that particular precinct or detective division. They will evaluate it on those factors. They'll actually send that report up to their divisional chief. The divisional chief will look at that. In addition, since 2021, late 2021, we've been using body-worn cameras. So not only is the report prepared, but if there's any video related to that particular incident, that is noted on those reports. Those videos are watched, and we make the determination as to what we're seeing. Is it justified? Is it reasonable? And are there needs for training? Or does it have to be referred to the district attorney's office or the attorney general? So that's how we handle our use of force reports. Every member here is duty-bound to intervene in any particular situation where unnecessary or unreasonable force is used, something that is beyond what is objectively reasonable. We're duty-bound to report that to a supervisor and not allow those types of things to happen.
Thank you, Chief. And now I'm going to have Chief Canavan from the Chief of Patrol's office, the Chief of Patrol, to speak about body-worn cameras.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Happy holidays. Wish you all the best. Just on top of what Chief Palmer was talking about with the use of force, all the members, every member of the Patrol Division, there are roughly about 1,800 members in the Patrol Division, are issued and wear body-worn cameras. We've had these since 2021, and as of August, we have recorded 404,725 individual videos of body-worn camera interactions with the public. It's quite a number. That amounts to roughly about 225 per member for that 6-month period, 7-month period. So how do we use body-worn cameras? We use body-worn cameras in many ways. First of all, use of force reports. I think this year so far we've reviewed over 650 use of force reports. Like the Chief says, we go far beyond what the state mandates. We go beyond in terms of what we would actually call the use of force rather than what the state would call the use of force. Each one of those incidents is recorded on body-worn camera. It's reviewed first at the local level by the local supervisor, whether that's a sergeant or lieutenant in charge of that officer. The second level of review on that body-worn camera goes to the precinct CO or the deputy CO. Once they review it and make their comments, they'll make any type of corrective action they feel necessary, if there is, and then it gets passed along to my office. Within the Chief of Patrol's office, I actually have one chief that is dedicated. That's all he does, is review body-worn camera video. Beyond that then, once it passes muster with that, the body-worn camera video gets forwarded up along with the use of force report to the Chief of Department's office, where it is reviewed once again. I cannot honestly tell you any other police department in this nation that does that type of scrutiny and review of body-worn camera videos in relation to use of force reports. So if they say a good sample size is roughly 10% of a population, whatever that sample is that you're looking at. In terms of use of force, we review 100%. So there is no sample, it's the entire, everything that we have use of force we review. In terms of the rest of body-worn cameras, the other interactions that don't necessitate any type of use of force or anything like that, the normal confrontations, the normal interactions, the normal things that we see out on the street, like I said, in the first 6 months of the year, 404,000 plus interactions that we've had among our 1,800 members in the Patrol Division. Of that, we review approximately 6.5% of that population, of that size sample. It's not the 10%, but when you look at these videos can range anywhere from 30 seconds to 30 minutes, sometimes more. So we do dedicate an awful lot of time and energy by our supervisory staff going back over and looking at body-worn camera video. So what do we do with it? It's a training tool. It definitely is. We use body-worn camera as a training tool. We use it with our recruits. When our recruits go out there, when they're finally cut loose, they're out on their own. Even their field training officers will review body-worn camera video with them to see that what they're doing, how they could do it a little bit better, how they could do it correctly if they're doing it incorrectly. We use it for investigations. We use it for crimes. We use it for complaints. The body-worn camera, when this program took off, there was some, I guess, skepticism on the part of the officers. It has been widely accepted. We find the body-worn camera now, the compliance with the program, we don't have to remind people to turn them on, turn them off. I think the police officers out there and the supervisors have readily accepted that, you know what, this is a great tool for the police department and a great tool that we can use. And we use it for the improvement of services offered. We really do. We're constantly looking at how we can make this department better, how we can make our interactions with the public better, and we do a lot of that through the review of body-worn camera video. So the process, I explained to you how it goes from, especially when we're talking about use of force, it goes through 4 layers of a process till it finally gets to the chief of department's office. Other video is reviewed by the squad supervisor. So this is a normal action. We go through every 6 months. We'll take a look at all our supervisors in the precinct. We'll look at how many times they've reviewed body-worn camera video. We kind of get on their cases a little if they're not looking at the body-worn camera video as much as we feel is necessary. But we make sure that even though I might have one supervisor who may be in charge of 16 people out on the street, that they are able to look at those people and see what they're doing when they're not being watched, when they're not being supervised directly. So the body-worn camera program has been really, it's been fantastic for this department. It's been great for us, like I said, as a learning tool and also as something to help us in terms of our interactions. Just to give you an idea of the 404,725 interactions that we've had, we reviewed 26,163. Like I said, that roughly amounts to about 6.5%. It's not that 10% that statistically we'd like to get to, but just time constraints make it very difficult. Of that, we've had 381 corrective actions taken. Corrective action. Now that amounts to about 1.4%, which is a pretty good, statistically speaking, population sample. That kind of disciplinary actions that we're looking at, or we'll call it corrective actions, really, is anything from just a verbal interaction between a supervisor and a police officer saying, hey, you could have done this a little better, could have done that a little better. It could be something as simple as you're wearing the wrong hat. To work, you shouldn't be wearing a Jets cap, you should be wearing a regular police hat. Anything as silly as that. But the interactions that we've had, the corrective actions that we've taken, we've seen, especially in the last year, really have dropped off in terms of the seriousness of them. We find that the body-worn cameras help this department tremendously. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Chief. And now we're going to have Chief Stillman. That kind of puts the last 2 speakers into context. Again, he's going to speak about complaints in the department.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy holidays. My name is Nicholas Stillman. I'm the Commanding Officer of Professional Standards Bureau. Part of my responsibilities is I encompass internal affairs investigations. I'm going to start with basically the complaint process, how a complaint's taken. It can be taken in person, via telephone, anonymously, through an email, through a third party. All those complaints are taken by a supervisor. When that complaint is taken, it's submitted to Internal Affairs, it's reviewed. The CO of Internal Affairs will then determine whether or not it's going to be sent back to the command for something minor to be investigated or sent to Internal Affairs to be investigated. Internal Affairs will investigate criminal conduct, excessive use of force cases, and serious crimes. There are multiple layers to sign off on these complaints. You have the Integrity Control Officer of the precinct who will actually investigate that. Then it will be signed off by the Commanding Officer of a precinct, then a Deputy Chief at that division, then the Chief of that division, then the CO of Internal Affairs, then the CO of Professional Standards, and then finally the Chief of Department. Those are the levels of sign-offs that are reviewed for this. The more serious crimes, serious allegations, under the Law Enforcement Misconduct Office of the State of New York, the Attorney General, we're mandated under 75A and B to report any serious misconduct, criminal conduct, excessive use of force. Under 75B, we are required, if an officer receives 5 complaints from 5 separate people, 5 different allegations over a 2-year period, we send those complaints up to the AG's office. Going back to our in-house investigations, if it's something criminal or excessive use of force, we have the Public Corruption Bureau of the Nassau County District Attorney's Office review those cases, as well as the Attorney General. Year to date, we are down a little over 20% of total complaints. Last year was 419. We are 334 this year. The prior year was 491. I believe that the body-worn cameras have reduced our complaints overall and reduced the types of allegations over the last year. Our unfounded complaints have gone down simply because with the body-worn camera, it either pretty much we can determine whether or not it happened or it didn't. We're trending down at this point, and the gentleman, I'm going to speak to you afterwards, and we'll find out what the issue was and where it occurred. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. I'm sorry. And next, I'm going to have Detective Sergeant Sabrina Gregg just quickly go over language line and something that's very sensitive right now, but bias complaints.
Good morning, all. I'm Detective Sergeant Sabrina Gregg. How are you all today? I believe I spoke before the ledge before, at least some of the members here, about the hate crimes, but I think it does, in light of what's been going on, it bears repeating about what qualifies as hate, bias, or First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. I think it's helpful, first of all, to begin with defining what an offense is. In lay terms, an offense is essentially anything or any action or behavior for which you can be held accountable. Now, that means jail, a summons, or nothing at all, but you have to be held accountable. Bias incident is an offense against a person or property which appear to be motivated in whole or in substantial part by the race, color, national origin, ethnicity, gender, gender expression or identity, religion, religious practice, age, disability, or sexual orientation of the victim, or the perception of those factors being present. Going forward, I'll just call those the protected classes. So the distinction between hate crimes and bias incidents is that the bias-motivated conduct or offense against a person or property is not a designated hate offense. That's the only stipulation between a bias offense and a hate offense, is that according to New York State law, you have to have a certain, a specific crimes have to be committed in order to be considered a hate offense. Hate speech, however, is offensive language, speech, or rhetoric, such as referring to someone in the before-mentioned protected classes, but there's no behavior or action. I know all of us probably remember the slew of littering that occurred before. Littering is a violation, and therefore it's not an offense. Yelling or screaming at someone is neither a violation nor an offense. An ugly offensive language, absent of any accompanying offense, is also protected by the First Amendment. But even though something is not considered a bias offense or a hate crime, our commissioner in this department always encourages people to report nonetheless, because what it allows us to do is to create data on behavior. And if something is not necessarily an offense one day because it's hate speech, that same person 2 years or a month later could commit something that's a hate offense. And that allows our department to maybe change the charges based on that behavior, or even just establish a pattern. And because of that, we've created a flyer that at any chance I get, I talk about is Stop the Hate flyer. But what it allows is people to text a complaint. They can email, they can send video, pictures, and the number is 516-500-0657. 516-500-0657. The email is combatbias@pdcn.org. Please remember that. I'm sure your constituents need to know the difference between the hate. Sometimes people don't understand that we're not able to go any further. There's things that we can prosecute. There are things that we can't. There's solvable crimes, but nonetheless, everything is worth reporting, so we can make that distinction. And when that's done, our asset monitors that, and it then goes to our precinct detective squads. It's going to the location of where the incident occurred, and will be investigated by that department. Even though it's going into a centralized line, it's then disseminated to the appropriate precinct in which the crime occurred. Year to date, we now have 71 in total, bias and hate crimes. Not just the hate crimes, but bias as well. Okay. And switching gears to language line. Year to date, this year, we currently have 4,895 calls that are being used for language line, as opposed to last year when there were 2,807 calls. I think that this is about double the amount. It's because of the push that we have for our members, education, informing, our auditing that we're doing. We're taking a number of measures to make sure that we are better, and the things that we do well, that we do even better. Thank you.
Okay, so two things I want to just, with that lawsuit that was mentioned earlier, it is there and it is being appealed by the county. It was several years before police reform and just finished recently. So the information is correct. The other stuff that we talked about that's going on now is our bias and our hate crimes that are on the rise, and that's why I had Sabrina here. We have had numerous protests and marches and gatherings already with no incidents, no arrests, no problems. To the same pattern that we did during the George Floyd marches, and we had kept everything calm, no property damage, no arrest. And again, that shows the professionalism of this department and how serious we take reform and what we've done. All of the numbers that you look at have always improved every single month. We've gotten better and better where we are. We are not perfect, but we have the ultimate respect for our communities, and we will continue to have that. If not, they will be held accountable. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and all the speakers. And none of us really are perfect. We'd like to say that we are, but we're not. But I do appreciate the fact that even right before Christmas, you're here with your staff to meet with us in regard to an update on the police reform for this year, for 2023. And I read through the report. We got it a little late, and I know that it was not because of you. You had sent it properly, but it got glitched somewhere. And I think, Chris, you're going to make sure that, and Michelle, we're going to make sure that the future committees will get this in a timely fashion. And I'm probably going to jump around a bit, and I know that I think some of the other legislators probably will have some questions as well. In regard to the training, I know that in the contract, the officers do have days that they utilize for training, correct? That they can go back to the academy for whatever type of training is required, or they just want to have it. Am I saying that correctly?
No, they go back to training for mandated training by the state of New York, DCGS, and also training that we, in our reform, guaranteed that we would do going back year after year after year.
And they are required to do this. It's not like it's not optional for them.
There are no exceptions.
They regardless, they have to show it, and you do monitor to make sure that every officer does comply with the 5 days or whatever is required of them for retraining.
There's an online sign-up sheet in the beginning of the year. We let the officers pick, and then after the 6-month period, everybody should be done. And then we start to catch up on those that were out sick, on line of duty, or those, we can't send somebody to the range that doesn't have a firearm, so he doubles up on other training that we send him through.
Okay, and then so these 5 days, but if you have an officer that, for disciplinary reasons, or for whatever reason, I don't know, but say discipline, are they then required to do additional retraining other than the 5 days?
All part of corrective action always includes training. Some are dismissals. They're not coming back. We don't want to train them. We get rid of them, right? And there are some that we get to the point where we say, okay, let's bring them back. It's immediately sent back before they go back to patrol on the street to do that corrective action training.
Okay. I just want to touch upon with wellness, because I know that it was brought up. And I've commended you in the past, and I've commended the offices that do this particular training, because I've been to the Wellness Center, and I did participate in I think two of the programs that they do have. And yes, I find that it is very effective, and it's something that I'd love even all the police departments across the United States, especially with I think it's the IREST, and helping officers because of the hours that they're forced to work. The fact that a lot of times, because they may be making arrests, they have to stay over in between their tours, and they may not always get as much sleep as we would get as normal citizens. So it is an effective tool in helping them with breathing and learning how to rest properly so that they can approach their job with a clear head. So I do commend you on that, and I'd love that to keep continuing, even if you can even expand it. And I appreciate the fact that you do allow even the civilians to attend these programs as well, and I do speak about it to a lot of people because I think it's absolutely fantastic. I might let one of the other, while I'm gathering my thoughts, but in regard, and I know that, in the past you've come up before us because we've honored some of the officers for extraordinary actions during the course of their jobs. And I know that we've spoken in the past, and I know that we don't always have these hearings, but you have been very reachable for us, and I know in the past if we've had any issues with anything from any of our residents, you have been readily available to discuss it with us and to deal with whatever it is. And I know that the important thing is in regard to the mental health, and I know that with the mental health community team, I think I'm saying it right, the mobile crisis outreach team, thank you. How many social workers are actually assigned to? Do you know offhand or is it, that's not under your control?
That's not under my control, nor do I know, but I know this, when we call them, they respond when they're available, and if they can't, they try to do it on the phone, but they have a large community out there that they're dealing with, and they do a darn good job with it, especially with us.
And I know that just even working within my community in regard to mental health programs, that, we know that we have a lack of, professionals, and a lot of doctors, that we just don't have enough people. We need to augment that. That's not your issue. That happens to be something on that side, on the civilian side, and I'm sure that if we can increase the number of social workers and or professionals, that it probably would be less and less, that your offices would have to do this on their own. But I found that even the response of your offices have been more on the positive side, even in regard to this, that you do. I think you had indicated a while back during public safety that in many cases you actually bring the people to hospitals. You'll bring them to an ER room, an ER center.
In most mental health cases, it's better to leave that person, when you can, home and deal with the professional. But we're not the professionals in that area. So our protocol is take them to the hospital where the professional is. Again, mobile crisis job is to try to keep that person stable in that home. And they do a very good job with what they're up against. It's larger than we've ever seen in our communities, right? So they're doing a good job of keeping there, but our job, our role, is to remove that person from the environment that he could either harm himself or others, get him in front of that professional, and that's what we do.
And I just had somebody that I know personally that had an issue with their child, and the child had to be removed. And as sad as it was for the family, it was better for everyone involved that he was sent to NUMC for observation and spent a couple of days there. So so kudos, thank you very much. For training your offices to be a little bit more sensitive in regard to issues such as that. I think legislator Millay.
Thank you, Chairwoman. We all have questions. I raised my hand first. So I want to thank everyone who's here the community advocates. I want to thank our police commissioner. I want to thank our police officers who are here. We're all doing our job. And I'm appreciative that we are here, and also to hear that there was it's not good that there was an issue with us getting the report in a timely manner, but that we're going to address that so that we can have these meetings as we're supposed to, which is twice a year. So that said, I'm going to move on to my questions. So, you know, of course, my first notes were in relation to the public comments, and you know, I picked and chose some certain things that were said. One of the things that really struck me was about benchmark requirements. So, you know, statistics are only as good as how you use them, of course. And so I'm curious, what are, and I'm not expecting you to have a definitive answer on this, Commissioner, but what are the benchmark requirements that would say, hey, here's something that we need to fix, to change, to look at in a different way? You know, I guess my question is, do we have those benchmark requirements, say for instance with racial disparities, right? There was discussion about how perhaps in some areas that the racial disparities don't reflect what the actual racial composition of the county is, and at what point does the department say, okay, so this is something that we need to look at, we need to, you know, is it 5%, is it 6%? You know, I don't know what that is, and so my question is, do you know what that is?
So the benchmarks are improvement. The numbers year over date, going back, comparisons, standing here in front of you, getting the questions, going back, and these numbers are the benchmarks. Do we improve? And the answer is yes. Can we do better? The answer is yes. How do we get there? We go back and we discuss this twice a week. We have a staff meeting and we discuss our overall issues in the department. And when we look at all of our data, and that's why these COs and DCOs are sitting here. They're responsible by precinct of that arrest data, that car stop data, that field interview, and we hold them accountable to see what they're doing for improvement. Do we over-police communities? The answer is no. Look at the numbers that we put out. It's the same in every precinct except the larger precincts in size. Do we go where the problem is? That's intelligence-led policing. Yes. Do we go because that's 73% of the community asks me to go there? Yes. And you know, we don't just wake up and just say, let's drive around into a community. We get driven every day by the data. Every one of these COs and DCOs gets a daily crime report every day. And it's a 12-page document that goes to them. And they look at it, and then they move their pieces on the board that work to improve the problem in the community. But the biggest thing that we've done in the department over the last several years is increase community affairs, increase our POP offices, increase our outreach to communities and town board meetings, all the things that you all benefit from. You see us there. So it's not, you know, I get it. I have a lot of respect for both Mr. Brewington and Susan, and we have conversations. It's not us against them. It's not. It's us doing our job better. Yes. Do we know how to do it? Yes. Can we get there? We try every day. And every day those numbers get better. And we have those hard meetings with our teams to say, you got to do better. I get it. I can argue for you all day long. It's based on probable cause. That person had that VTL. That's the reason we stopped. But everything is transparent because it's on a body camera now. Every car stop is on a body camera by our police officers. I don't know what the villages do, but ours police officers have a body camera. Our supervisors have a body. That's why our complaints are down 20%. The people who are making complaints, there are some very legit victims out there that need services from us and corrective action. We know that, and Nick Stillman's team, along with the district attorney's team, along with the attorney general's team, and then the U.S. attorneys in the civil rights actions. All of those come together to oversee and manage those complaints as they come through. We're not trying to push anything aside. We address it. We sit here every 6 months. I gave that report on time as required. It went up on the site, and the site blew up. It happens in technology. It was up there, and then it blew up. And now we got to go get it fixed, and we got it fixed, and the county exec's office put it right back up. It's not, but we're not hiding. If somebody wanted it, it was sent to those that can get it to everybody here. So we're not hiding nothing. We know we have shortfalls, and we try to correct it. Every single day, we try to make ourselves better. But I will tell you this, there's not a county in this country that serves their community as well as we do. Not a county. And we don't fight things. We don't pick sides. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. You ask, we go after the problem. And all of you have the same complaints across the board. And that's what we do. And this is what they're here today to see and understand what goes through at these meetings when we come here. I'm fighting their data. They're the ones that got to work to make the data better.
Right, and we are eternally grateful to you for that, certainly. Okay. If I understood you, what you maybe cryptically said, in terms of the letters that there have been no response to that Mr. Brewington talked about, that's not something that needs to be addressed with you, that if I'm understanding correctly, that needs to be addressed with the administration? Is that?
I know when I receive a letter, it's directly to me, I'll answer the letter. But when there's 9 people CC'd on the letter, it's not my place to answer the letter for the people that are above my name, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, I understand it. Okay, so, and Mr. Brewington, you know that you'll get us those letters, and we can hopefully take. No, you don't need to.
Just say, yes, I will,
yeah,
and I'll give you the ones that address directly to the commission.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. Okay, so mobile crisis unit, and I know that you can't really talk about that because it's not under your jurisdiction, but I'm making a request, Chairwoman, that at our next meeting or wherever it might be appropriate, that we have the mobile crisis unit here directly so that they can answer our questions. We need to know, are they, is it the department large enough? Are they able to most effectively do the work that they do? Do they have the resources that they need? So. Yeah, well, we need to know that, right? Yeah. Okay. One thing that I didn't hear about was catalytic converters. We had heard about that an awful lot over the last maybe year ago. I'm wondering where that falls in your report. I know that you had made great strides to address that, and that the numbers went way down, as I remember, if I'm remembering correctly, but I would like to hear that.
So when it comes to catalytic converters, as you know, we made the big arrest of the 2 brothers that were involved. We've made several others, and there's an ongoing investigation now as we speak. Our overall grand larcenies are down 7.57%. So in there is all of those that fit the category of a grand larceny, a theft of property over $1,000.
So a catalytic converter is considered grand larceny?
Depending on the value of the catalytic converter, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. And so it does get confusing, the Nassau County Police versus Village Police, because we don't have the data on the village polices, even though that's part of Nassau County. And of course, I'm not expecting you to provide that. But since that's part of Nassau County, we probably can't.
All of your major crime data
I
from
think
our
they did
villages.
their own plans, right?
No,
They
did their own plans, correct? But all the major crime that you're talking about is in the data. It's all one. If there's a homicide or a robbery, we take that number.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I said that already. Oh, Detective Greg, could we have a PDF of that that flyer, the Stop the Hate flyer? Okay, that would be great. And with regards, you said that there were 71 bias and hate crimes this year. I'll ask Commissioner, and then if you need to pass it on, is that, where does that stand in terms of last year, the year before?
Last year, there were year-to-date, well, total of 2022, 59 hate crimes.
So this has gone up.
It has gone up.
And do you have the numbers from the year before that?
Year before, just hate crimes was 54.
Okay, but this number, this 71, is
hate and bias, so all the offenses.
Okay.
And I have to emphasize, and Sabrina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there is zero violence in any of those cases.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. I've asked my questions. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Legislator Bynum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Commissioner.
Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm sorry.
So, I want to start out by thanking you on two accounts, but I'll start with this first. I would say that you are the most approachable, accessible, and responsive police commissioner or even department head here in Nassau County. And so what I'm going to say further past that comment or compliment to you is that I think this administration is doing you a huge disservice. And I'm going to speak to Chris Lemoyne in this moment to say that if in any way we are restricting our police commissioner's ability to be responsive to his public, shame on us, shame on the administration. It's wrong. They're actually pitting him against the community when they do that. He has to be able to communicate what he's doing in his role to safeguard this community. He must be able to provide them with the data that they ask, and he needs to be able to be responsive in real time when these requests come in, because otherwise it makes it appear as though he is not being transparent. It's not right. And every time that we do that, we further erode the trust between the community and our police department. We need to fix that. We need to fix that. I know it's not you, Chris, and I'm hoping someone upstairs is listening, but I'm asking that you deliver that message to them, okay? Because it's flat out wrong. I also want to say that I do think that this administration is also doing us a disservice. They're doing us a disservice because instead of using the funds that we have been awarded by way of the opioid settlements and by way of COVID funds for the purpose of helping us recover from all of the traumatic effects of both of those pandemics, epidemic, however you want to phrase it for the opioid. But we're using this money in so many ways that I think is wrong. I know we want to attract tourist dollars here so we can help our economy, and I understand it, and it's in the paper today, and I have the same strong feelings as my colleagues who were quoted in that article regarding how we're using that funds or that amount of funds to, you know, have some level of a celebration here for, I think it's 125 years. Listen, I'm all in favor of celebrating that, but not to the tune of $10 million. I think we can do good when we're doing well, and it's very clear that we are not doing well in this county, that people are suffering from mental health issues, people are homeless. There's so many things that are wrong here, and we instead would come down here and bring an item asking us for $10 million to do that, but we haven't figured out how to use $10 million to create a one-stop shop, someplace where our police officers can take people to get the services they need, someplace they can go 24 hours a day. CNG Guidance is struggling to pull off that type of service for our community, struggling to do that. But instead of giving them $10 million to pull that off, we want to have a 125th anniversary. I've spoken so strongly on this issue, and each time it really infuriates me. Like, I get madder and madder each time that I have to be here speaking to these issues and trying to redirect our energy. It's wrong. It's wrong. That money needs to go to entities that can provide a situation, provide an opportunity for situations that are playing out in households across this county. Get them the help they need. The commissioner knows because I've had to call him when I've been contacted by residents who are struggling with young people living in their house who are acting erratic, and where the parents are even afraid to go to sleep at night. But they have nowhere else to take these kids. They have nowhere else to take these people. Okay, so we got to do better than that. So the complaint is we're taking them to the hospital, and I hear that. I hear you, because that's not probably the best place we can serve them, especially when we don't have a public benefit hospital that has the ability to be stabilized to the extent that they can expand their services and maybe even help those people in a different way in that space. Again, another failure. So I think we have to address those things, and I'm gonna turn my questions now to you, Commissioner Ryder. So we have a recruitment class that's going to graduate tomorrow, I believe it is. Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And what are we looking at in terms of diversity of those individuals that are graduating?
I honestly don't know that number. I can get it to you. I apologize, I wasn't prepared for that. Tomorrow, if you ask me, I would know it. But the class is graduating tomorrow. We have a new class that is in there right now, which is a very high diversity number, more than we've had in a long time. And we have another class scheduled for for May. The test is out, and it's going to take place, I believe, January 5th. The county exec, after we spoke about the recruitment, we had recruited over 40,000 kids to take the test. When it came to the actual signing up for the test, we were down to 9,000 kids. So what we did was, the county exec had it extended an extra 2 weeks with civil service approval, and we went out again after those kids in the minority communities to make sure we're getting them signed up. And so the number went back up to about 12,000. But that is still down from where last test, 12,000 actually showed up for the test. But I think it was more like 19 to 20 that signed up. So this number is 12,000. So now the job is getting them there. And that's the difficult part, to make sure that these kids show up. There are several dates that they give them. And so we want to make sure that all the kids can get there and take this test. And we're offering mentoring programs. They have outreach to the fraternal organizations where they're able to turn around and if they have a problem or a need, we're trying to help them out.
Thank you. And I want to also thank you on the record for expanding services to those individuals and opportunities, more importantly,
Absolutely.
to those individuals who have signed up for the test, where you had the seminars at the Police Academy. You held them, I guess, in October, just so that we can keep them engaged, which I think is really great. I'm happy that you implemented that, and I hope that it really proves to bolster
It was a good suggestion.
Thank you for doing it. I hope it bolsters the number of individuals who will follow through on the test.
So do we all.
Okay, good. So I think it was Inspector Stellar, but the complaints that come in, and five times a complaint comes in on one officer, it goes up to the AG, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So what are we doing to track, how are we tracking that? Because I'm a proponent for the EIS software. I think that we should be using that software because it allows for us to identify challenges in our officers even before that fifth complaint. It's tied to a pattern of performance, and it allows for us to get them into peer mentoring, maybe into the EAP program if there's a problem. It doesn't wait for the fifth complaint to trigger. And I know that you might be sending people off for EAP involuntarily, like they have to go. It's mandated, right? But are we using any type of tracking? Did we buy into the EIS to track that?
Chief Stillman will explain the program that we use, but what we've also done, every complaint that occurs or comes in against our police officers is brought to my attention, brought to the chief's attention, and when the investigation is being done, we don't know. Because we don't want to interfere or be part of any investigation. So when it's done, then the findings go through the process that was explained earlier. So when there was someone that, we had a police officer down in the 4th precinct, we were concerned on his tactics. Not that he did anything wrong, but he got a complaint, but when we looked at the body camera, it showed the complaint was not valid, but we did see a tactic on his part that was not good. We pulled him off the street immediately. We placed him into the academy. He went through both understanding the 4th Amendment and his constitutional right of that driver of that vehicle, and then also understanding search and seizure, and also making sure that you understand about the safety of yourself and others, because it was a safety issue that really came into play. So we are looking at that, and we do send in the early intervention, but I'll let Chief Stillman explain.
So prior to anything being sent up to the AG's office under 75B, which is the 5 complaints over 24 months, we have an internal trigger of 3 complaints within a 12-month period. If that occurs to one of our officers, they are now brought to their commanding officer and interviewed about the complaints and anything else that might be going on, whether it might be an issue at home or some outside issue. If we find a pattern of complaints, like the commissioner said, and it might be something with a mental health issue or it might be struggling with some other issues, then they'll be mandated to go to employee assistance.
But so the EIS is a specific software that's used by police departments across the United States, and it's helpful in being able to actually track and the pattern of performance of officers. I've asked this several times that we actually invest in it and use it, or have we done that?
We built our own program internally. It's called the Blue Team, and this, because everybody has a need that's different. You buy something off the shelf, you're going to have to adapt it to make sure that what's being done in your department. So what we've done, we had our own in-house people create. Nick, you back up there. What's the actual program called?
It's called IA Pro is the program. The actual program for the complaints is called Blue Team. We've developed that over a number of years to customize it specifically for us. Like I said, there's a 12-month, 3 complaints within a 12-month period will trigger an alert for us that we know that that officer has received those 3 complaints.
Okay, and so this EIS thing, because, you know, I'm like, you know, dog with a bone when I get something, right? So I actually invested some time to meet directly with the folks that are I guess, the licensees of that software and that approach. And so I met with them in person. I've met with them over the phone and just call them from time to time to get information. It's more than just a complaint that's built into that EIS system. It's tracking whether they're having car accidents. It's tracking whether they're not coming to work in their uniform properly. It's tracking whether they come to work late. It's beyond that, because all of those are indicators that someone might need help. And if we wait for the complaints to come in, you know, praise God if it only takes 5 times for someone to escalate to physically harming someone, but we know that's not the case. They can harm someone on the first complaint. So it's tracking their pattern just to make sure, like the person who came, and it may have just been, you know, as an example, but someone coming to work with the Jets hat. Well, they know that they're not supposed to be coming to work with the Jets hat. So are they defying in some way because there's something else going on in their life, right? So we know good people do bad things. We know people under stress do bad things, right? and may not perform properly. So this goes way beyond just complaints. It looks at all of their patterns of behavior. And it was actually, PERF went back in 2015, I think it was, when I first got here, and it was a use of force in the community that left us with more questions than answers, and this body in response to that commissioned the PERF report, and to commission PERF to come out and do this type of analysis of our police policies. And it was through that process that a lot of the use of force policies were changed. That's why some of the use of force stuff that other police departments had to address during the police reform process through New York State, some of that stuff we had already done, and that was because of the PERF report. In that PERF report, it clearly states EIS or something very similar is what we should be using. It's not just based on complaints. And I've said this has got to probably be the 7th or 8th time. I said it so many times during the police reform hearings. This is the direction that I think this department, given its size, needs to go, because we're too large to be, trying to manage that, utilizing supervisors and the like at all times, where data is not just being collected in one space. And, our officers don't even, they don't do roll call. That's something, from the past, right? They're a lot of times changing shifts in fire departments and things of that nature. So to be able to know whether they're showing up on time and having all that data collected will let you be able to see the officer, because they're no longer being able to be physically seen in a roll call. So I'm not going to stop, bringing this up as an issue.
I will bring it to Chief Stillman, and we'll meet with the Chief of Department. We'll bring the program in, we'll take a look at it, and we'll evaluate it.
Please.
I will.
Please. Thank you. And so I want to go back to the mental aided situation. So we talked about, them not being able to go somewhere else, because this county hasn't invested in a real way to make sure that they have somewhere else to go. But, my colleague, Legislator Millet, spoke to the number of individuals that are out there working in the field, and where our issues might lie in terms of being able to have proper responses and have some real consistency in being able to do that. And so I think it's Human Services that actually, because when we set up the study, we had you co-chair along with Human Services.
That's right.
Have you been able to, do you meet with them to go over your statistics on what's happening with?
So through the Chief of Patrol's office, we do discuss the data with Mobile Crisis Team. Our Communications Bureau, which has been trained on response with Mobile Crisis, to work with them. They've been trained on it, and they also discuss the data. I got to, calls answered by Mobile Crisis 177, where they've handled it, and then 457 times they've been on scene with us, and notified 911 and scheduled appointments. So we're doing the yeoman's work when it comes to it, but it's a complicated, as you know, because of the large amount. That's 6 months, and it's 2,300 calls for mental health.
Yeah.
But from the police department side, I'm always happy to say that we have used no force, no injuries have been occurred during this process. Our guys go through, and gals go through very strict training when it comes to that response. Their patience is impeccable. What they wait for, and they work with them until we get them where we need to get them. That's when we pass it on.
I've been on scene with them. They, along with the engagement with the Mobile Crisis Team, and just handled perfectly. My concern, I guess, is perfect as it can be, because we don't have the alternative location to bring them so that they can get the help. But my concern is being able to do that more consistently across our communities, similar to Deborah. So I'd ask in advance of Human Services or anyone else coming to speak to us regarding their staffing levels, that we look at when we're finding there's gaps in their services, if we can identify it, like it's, 9 to 12, maybe we can ask them from 9 p.m. to 12 that we need to ramp up more staffing. If I think that we need to look at it methodically so that we can provide some real pragmatic solutions to what the issues might be in their gaps of service. And I don't want to go on a rant again because I felt my blood pressure go up, but I do think that this is another perfectly good use for that ARPA money and for that COVID money, because we are in a health crisis regarding these issues. 1 second. And so I wanted to piggyback off of some of the questions that were asked on public session. So I'm gonna just want you to help me a little bit with this, the comments that were made about Operation Natalie and aftercare and the police making the visit. Could you explain to me what that looks like?
Many overdoses end up in the hospital before we even get involved, right? So what we do is we make sure that we visit the family after. We go the next day, knock on the door, see how the family got what they needed. We hand out the pamphlet that we have. We give them access to the app, explain them to the app that you can put on your phone for services. We then also continue the investigation of the overdose, about what happened and how we can assist them in that. Because that individual, when that gets out of that hospital, is going to come home. And the first thing he's going to do is call the dealer again and get delivered more drugs. Happens every single time.
So what is the intention behind the home visit?
One, to make sure the services are provided, they're getting everything they need, the wellness of that person, and then also to go after and continue the investigation.
So who's coming to the house? Is it uniformed police, detectives?
It's 2 detectives. They are assigned just to the day tour, and because usually it's the next day. It's a male and a female that go to the residence, and then they speak to that family.
So it's in the process of an investigation where technically, I guess,
it's our duty to do an investigation.
Okay.
But we add that into it as the services. We're not going in and just saying, hey, give me the phone, give me the numbers, and see you later. We're going in, attempting to investigate, but at the same time, we're handing them the pamphlet, we're handing them the app, and explaining to them, is there something did you get what you're looking for last night? And almost all of them turn back and say, listen, I need to stop the guy who's supplying the drugs to my son.
it almost makes sense, and you probably already know where I was going, is to have the mental health crisis team be embedded in those kind of responses.
And many times we do call them and have outreach to them and let them know.
Come with you.
Yep. But this is a police investigation at this point.
I understand.
And we're giving them the services and the direction to get there. We're not doing the service of that mobile crisis or somebody of that nature.
I understand. I'm just wondering, and I'm asking the question, whether you would deem it appropriate, and whether you might see the value in having mobile crisis accompany those detectives to that home so that they can help. You're doing an investigation, and I hear you. We need, you need to do that. But in the same breath, they need some level of mental, because 9 times out of 10 they've gone to the hospital and just had the physical care, but not any real approach to the mental health care at the hospital. That would be
9 out of 10 times they walk out of the hospital within 3 hours with no care at all.
That's why I'm saying maybe some dual response. That's
again, we look at it from the police perspective, and again, if there are services, we make sure they are getting or directed towards those services. We take it one step further than it's ever been done before.
I understand, and I can't compartmentalize and only look at the police response. I gotta look at the other half of the response too, and I'm just trying to find a way where we can get care to them and do the investigation at the same time and have the care come from professionals. Okay, and then, you know, you kind of talked a little bit to this non-resident, resident demographic piece, in terms of the folks that are being arrested. I'm not sure that I fully understand why we weren't doing the demographic piece for the non-resident.
We give you the demographics from Nassau County. And I say I arrest somebody as a resident of Nassau County, that is compared to the demographics of Nassau County. I explain that 30%, and I forget what the number is, 30% of those that are being arrested come from New York City. If I'm going to use that data, am I going to use then the 8 million people that live in the city of New York?
Now I understand.
You know?
Thank you. I was having a hard time.
And I'm not trying to fool nobody. We'll get the data. It's not I'm just explaining it's 30%.
I understand your rationale now.
Yeah.
I don't know how we control for that.
I don't know either.
I have to think about it, but I understand now. I don't know that I understood it before. Thank you. Forfeiture. There's been some other data that's been floating around regarding the amount that we are seizing here versus the level of crime. Could you tell me, because I don't know that I fully understand, I think there's different pools of money that come down from forfeiture.
There are the federal side, which is Justice and Treasury, and there's the state side, 13A. All the money that is seized during that criminal activity, if it's prosecuted in the state of New York, if it's a DA's case, that forfeiture then is, divided by the state of New York. There's a mathematical equation written by law that says the PD gets this percentage, the DA gets this percentage, and the state gets this percentage. On the federal side, it's set by the standards of Attorney General's office, and that guide says these monies that are either Treasury or Justice, whichever agency falls under that umbrella, and that money then goes into that pot when it's seized. You submit what's called a DAG, your time, your hours, and resources that are in it, and when the case is settled, usually 3 to 4 years after the arrest is done, the money gets handed down, and a check appears for that case.
So these are cases, and many times these are cases that have joint operations, and
that is correct.
Okay. All right. I may have some more questions about that, but we'll email you directly for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Commissioner.
Legislator Reggie Whitten.
Thank you. And I want to just give my colleague, Legislator Ford, just kudos, because I've served with you on this committee, I think, for almost 10 years. And you've always handled it very professionally, and your heart is always in the right place, and it's been an honor to serve with you. So I just want to, my colleagues have touched on many of the items, but I want to reinforce a couple of things. One, I had a request from a mayor, Village Mayor Flower Hill, to attend a meeting, and they requested you're known, and I said I would try. And you know, unfortunately, there is a process which seems to be in place with this administration, which wasn't there before. Not only with you, but any commissioner, they want us to go through the administration. Well, that's fine, but I did email Detective County Executive Walsh last Wednesday, and I have yet to hear anything. And you know, this is a mayor who doesn't ask for too much, and they have seen a slight uptick, in their opinion anyway. They're right near 25A, which is right across from them is the Miracle Mile. There have been, you know, there's some concerns with the high-end stores that we've seen some crimes that haven't been seen before. Anyway, I haven't yet to receive a response, and I really think that having them determine whether or not either I'll get a response, the administration meaning them, or if it'll be approved, it takes away from what I see as the police department, which is really a separate branch of, it's a, you know, you're part of almost the judicial branch in a sense. It's the public safety branch of government. And to have an executive branch determine whether or not the legislative branch has their requests even acknowledged, I think it's a poor example of governing, and I think something has to come up that's better if we don't get a response at all. So that's not you. I'm just saying, you know, it's just the experience I'm having with the administration, which I'm finding very frustrating because I'm not responding to this mayor, and it's making me look bad. So just going further, obviously my district has a very small percentage which is covered by Nassau County Police. So getting the statistics, I understand for any type of major crime the county's called in, I understand that. But so are the arrests in general calculated in your statistics from places like Sands Point, Port Washington, Glen Cove?
Arrest data belongs to the village that makes the arrest unless it's a major crime. If it's a major crime, it will come to us. We handle basically all major felonies that occur. But most villages handle all misdemeanors, and some go a little further, like the city of Glen Cove, and they're great cops, great detectives, doing great work up there.
I'm not in any way criticizing.
No, I know.
I'm just trying to get the statistics clear. I have to be careful about that. So in other words, even for those, like, do you know what percentage of Nassau County is covered only by the village police for such things as tickets or people being pulled over?
All summonses are issued by the village, that police department. They belong to that village. They're not in my equation.
But do we know what percentage
I do not.
Group falls into? Because I think it's pretty significant. I was just trying to make a list of Freeport, Hempstead. You know, Nassau County, we might only, I don't know, maybe it's closer to 50%, you think, coverage of Nassau County?
I think we have more of that coverage, but I'm not 100% sure.
You think it's more? Do you know what it is? I would just like to know. Because, right, if we get, I like numbers because they give us a good description, but only having Nassau County numbers and not incorporating the village statistics all over. I mean, even if it's 40%, it's still a good amount. It's enough to skew the numbers as far as the statistics. I mean, I'm not saying good or bad or right or wrong. It's just, it's not really an accurate description if all we have is Nassau County numbers.
Well, I think, and the numbers you have Nassau County, we're talking about the Nassau County Police Department, right? If you bring in the Hempstead Police Department, Freeport Police Department, they answer to a different branch, and they answer to a different mayor, and their statistics can be totally skewed because they are more precise in their communities about the demographics.
I understand. I'm just saying, look, I respect the profession of the police. I do, but I also understand, and seeing those young people that just left, and I'm sorry they left already, but I understand the concerns of our residents as well. I understand both sides, and honestly, I think both sides are both really striving for the good, you know, and unfortunately, you know, sometimes there is a bit of a clash, but I think deep down inside we both have the same goal, which is to protect our community, number one, but also make sure that every resident feels safe, and also, number three, which is very important, is to make sure that our professionals who have a very difficult job are getting the mental health and other support that they need. So I don't think our objectives are that different, but, you know, I feel that there is a little divisiveness sometimes, but I think if we had a really good accounting of villages and county police together, all of Nassau County really, it would just give us a better idea as to what the numbers actually are. So I don't know if it's possible, and I know it's not mandated by the state nor this report. I get it. I'm not trying to.
Well, the state did mandate each village to do their own reform.
Right.
And to be honest with you, you can't compare us with the villages because.
I'm not trying to compare.
No, I don't mean policing.
Right.
I mean the numbers, the data, because it would go a totally opposite direction, and you would have. But Hempstead is 60-70% Latino right now, and so obviously that number is going to be a lot higher. Right. So That wouldn't work. I'm responsible for where I police.
But you're comparing it to the residents of Nassau County, correct?
Because the residents of Nassau County drive all the roads in Nassau County.
Correct, but your database, in a sense, which you're comparing it to, is all of Nassau County, yet it's only about 60%.
If you took out Hempstead and Freeport out of my equation, I guarantee you my numbers work a lot better.
I get it. But I'm just saying, again, I'm not even saying in your seat, but as an objective person, it would sort of be interesting just to see what all of Nassau County numbers were for the county, not just where we police, but just to have it correlated somehow so that we really had a better idea. I don't know. It just, to me, we're getting a window, which is a good one. The county is doing, in my opinion, a good job of reporting. It's just that I feel that it's not an accurate total description of all of Nassau County if it's only incorporating the portions that we're policing. And I understand why that is, but I think it would be interesting just to see a study to see what all the villages' statistics or city statistics with the county statistics showed. It would
That
just
kind
be
of
interesting.
makes my argument regarding the percentage that come from New York City. Same discussion then could be had.
Except for the fact that it's the county, and again, the base number that you're comparing it to is what the representation of each of these groups is for the entire county, but we're only using probably 60% of the policing. It's just an observation from from a legislator. So I don't know if that can happen, but if it could, it would just be interesting to correlate all of the statistics together. Detective Sergeant Greg, who's excellent. Has that flyer been distributed to? I think it should be distributed anyway to all places of worship. I used it in my newsletter.
It is gone out in our infrastructure database to every single synagogue, every church, and every mosque in the county.
Okay, and maybe
that are on our system.
I know we have some money for advertising, tourism, but maybe we could use it for distributing this flyer as well. Maybe even in sometimes you see the commercials on TV. I think it's really worth getting out there. And you're still under the same. I shouldn't answer your question. Are you still under the same impression that we don't need a specific force for?
Nassau County runs different than most places, right? We have individual responsibility to an area, and that detective squad does that. As you know, we struggle with hiring detectives, right? Because there is a great responsibility that comes with it, and they do a great job. But every time you start siphoning off and making it another special group, you lose the integrity of the investigations, you lose the responsibility, you also start to lose the power behind a group instead of a singular. What we did, though, was narrow it to one place. It goes to the Intel division. I know the name of the Intel is Asset Forfeiture and Intel, as you guys all know. But when Sabrina said it before, it's Asset, it's the Intel. That is a phone that is dedicated to that number and only to that number. And when the report comes in, if somebody wants to say something, it is manned from 7 o'clock in the morning till 1:30 in the morning. And then on the overnight, the messages are taken the next morning. And obviously, we don't tell anybody to call a hotline number if it's a 911 type scenario. And then you could send us a photo, you could send us a text, all of the above. And then from there, an immediate workup gets done by the Intel detective. And then he sends it to the group. On that group is myself, the Chief Palmer, Chief Detectives, Chief Patrol, Commissioner Smith. We all get it. So we make sure there's responsibility being taken for the case. And then someone says, the Chief Canavan will say, that is a patrol, it's a report, we'll take it, we're responding, we'll get the information, and it comes back up. Or, that's already a report's been taken, Chief Farrell says we're taking it in the detective division. And then all of that is followed through those layers that it ends up on Chief Barchera's desk as the number 2 and number 3 in the DD, right? Or it ends up in, and Chief Palmer gets to overlook it again, as well as the patrol division. So we have so many eyes on top of a hate crime or a bias crime, and we take them all very serious. It's mandated by the county exec to make sure that we are all over this.
I get it, and I think you've been doing an incredible job, and I appreciate, I know when I was in Merrick one time, you really seem to take it very serious, and things have, I haven't heard any complaints. I think you're really addressing all the concerns, and as someone who has the Holocaust Museum in my district, I really appreciate your attention to that as well. Okay, so just two more quick things, and I'm sorry, I guess Mr. Burrington had to leave, but how would a police officer who maybe felt stressed out, or how would they approach getting help? Because as Mr. Burrington said, requiring it every 3 years, I don't think that's the way to go.
So you can't require
Right, no.
someone to report their mental health
I
issues,
totally get
right?
it.
But what you can do is offer them the resources and train the members around that person. What we've done under Commissioner Smith, who runs the wellness program, you have both wellness, which is part of your mind, body, and soul. You have our Office of Office of Employee Assistance that goes out there, and you also have the peer support group. So, but by doing the training, and by the way, we do it several times a year. It's sold out. We can't, and not sold out. There's no charge, but it's sold out, and it's packed, and everybody comes out of it and says, "Wow, that was great. That was great." We've now opened it up we've opened it up to the legislators. We've opened it up to other agencies that they're training. We're training the trainers on what we do. So if an officer is struggling, if we're not identified some way or he hasn't come forward to us, we many times rely, every single time there's a suicide, or I'm going to just change it, every time there's an active shooter, somebody knew something and didn't say something. And we had a recent officer 2 years ago where when the person came to me and says, "Oh yeah, we knew that he had a problem." Well, you knew he had a problem and you didn't tell us? And then now we're fixing that problem. So the program that Commissioner Smith has put in place, along with Inspector Moles, is outstanding. And the training, to the point they want these rescue dogs in the station house, which I'm not going for because I got fleas. But it's really done an outstanding job for identifying. And it's been several years since we've had a suicide in this department. And so, again, kudos to the group and the work that they're doing.
I'm happy to hear that. And again, I don't think anytime you mandate anyone,
No.
especially something like that, but like you could see it with kids even, you can't mandate it. If they want help, it's good to be able to provide it. And just probably the last question or statement, but I understand with Natalie's law, and again, I stand with my colleagues in the fact that out of what I think we had was over $70 million in the opioid funding lawsuits so far, only $2 million has been sent out. When you're arrested or when you have an overdose and then you're sent home, they have studies that show it really takes the receptor like almost 3 months to go back to normal. So whoever's coming out, the receptor for the opioid is still very much enlarged, and they're going to be craving more drugs. And the fact that we haven't given out this money, and the fact that it's being used for interest in the budget is just driving all of us really crazy. Because I actually live in proximity to a family that is dealing with this, and I've spoken to you about it. And having someone come there and see if they can get the information, especially on the drug dealer, especially with fentanyl right now. Because these drug dealers, a lot of them are aware that there's fentanyl and things, and they're not telling the people that they're selling it to. They're advertising it as a great high. And I have a friend whose granddaughter, 19, overdosed, and the drug dealer basically said that. And they were able to get the information on the drug dealer by going to the home after it was too late. But so, in my opinion, yes, we want to be sensitive to people that are facing opioid addiction. I'm 100% with you. However, this is a fight for our kids' lives. And when you meet families where it's too late, where we've lost the battle, and even if it's one of the first couple times of the child trying it, it's too late. Like, we have one opportunity when we know someone overdosed, that they have a drug dealer most likely. They know where these drugs came from, or someone, or before that drug dealer does it again, or if we have more information, I'm all for it. I think we are in a crisis mode. And yes, we want to be sensitive. Yes, we want to have, if we can have social workers, if we can have support. Honestly, like my colleague, I picture us taking some of that $70 million and putting it either into CNG, who has not gotten their first initial round of funding, but we also have this hospital sitting here with empty floors. I could see us making that such an incredible rehab center. It would solve two problems at once. It would help us have a place for people to get real treatment for more than 28 days, which is what insurance pays for, and it would help the hospital, which is in a very financially, a terrible state. Anyway, my point is, again, here we are in two good intended sides. One being sensitive to the person who overdosed, and I'm 100% for that. But the other is in this fight, especially with fentanyl, we have to get as much information as possible. And I hope it's done in a sensitive way, as I'm sure it is, with a professional way. And I'm glad you're distributing the app and other information. But this fentanyl has changed the rules, and I'm glad that you're doing your best to investigate these drug dealers, because they're the ones who are selling it to a lot of unexpected customers.
When it comes to Operation Natalie, we weren't asked by anybody to do more than what we do, right? Enforcement, that's our job. That's what we do. But we took it upon ourselves to get education, awareness. The enforcement part is always important to it. The diversion part of it and the aftercare. But what's happened because, and again, this is fact, right? What's happened is because of the bail reform, you arrest somebody as a drug dealer and a drug seller at the same time. The seller's going to get the buyer, is going to get an appearance ticket at the station house, and the dealer is going to go over to the court and be dismissed with no bail. I'm up against it. And then what happens is, where's the buyer going the next day? Right back to the dealer. And so, we could talk about a lot of ways to do it, but I know this, is that when it comes to Operation Natalie, this police department has done far more than they're required to do. And that's what they do in a lot of things. And, the thought process that goes from the men and women that sit behind me is that we're going to serve as best as we can. What can we do? Well, that's not really, we don't ever say that's not our job. That's not my job. The aftercare is not my job. But it is there that we get the services to them, we get them the CARES app, we get them a pamphlet, and we go after the drug dealer so that drug dealer stops going back to that child and selling him the same drugs.
Well, I agree with, I'm sorry, but again, to be sensitive and to try to get that person, listen, if that person's alive, thank God, and they do need services.
He's walking out, we got to lock him up.
But if they have any information as to who gave them these drugs, especially if fentanyl's involved, I'm all for getting as much information as we can. I mean, again, you sit with these families who have lost 19-year-olds to fentanyl, and you understand the urgency of it, and we need to do what, the best we can to find these drug dealers and show them that it's real. And I will go on the record, and I've done it before, that I do think that some of bail reform, although very well intended, some of it should be adjusted. And I have
we
said
all
that
agree on that.
many, many times, and I feel that, I would really like to see that happen. All right, I think, you guys up?
Legislator McCabe.
Commissioner, just to go back to what the purpose of the mobile crisis team is, it's my understanding the mobile crisis team is there to assist in those situations where the person has some sort of mental health disorder or mental health situation, but it's not there to deal with a substance abuse situation. Substance abuse is handled a different way. Am I correct in that assessment?
That's correct. Substance and mental health, but many times they do mix up,
right?
As we know.
The co-occurring disorder is something the state's been struggling for decades how to handle. Many times there are, but sometimes they aren't.
That's correct.
Just to go on what was described, a question beforehand regarding the Premier One platform. Can you describe exactly how does that platform work and how it deals with the processing cases and how it's all administered?
Everything goes into one database that when we process arrest, we take a case report, we do an AIDIT, we do an auto accident. It all goes into Premier One. There's one search place that we go to find the data to link everything together. So Premier One is a software that we bought and implemented. We used to have Swift and whatever the other one was. But the idea of it is that there's a one-stop shop where everything goes into eventually. And for the new discovery rules, which are overwhelming to us, it's in there for us. So it's basically, we take everything that's in Premier One, we push the button, and we send it to the DA's office.
And is the purpose then Premier One to go and take all that evidence and you package up so the DA can then work on it? Because obviously when bail reform came in, the DA would need tons of people just to photocopy records. So it's now all an electronic system rather than a paper system. Is that part of the purpose of that system?
That's right. So Premier's got that paperwork side of the world. Right. Then there's video, there's body camera, there's evidence. So a program that we bought called NICE actually pulls it all together and like reaches down and pulls everything related to whatever the case number is, brings it to one place. We review it as Discovery Expediters, and then we send it to the district attorney.
So from the Premier One standard, is really the purpose of that system just to really collate all the data and all the evidence, or do you go and you track what happens with cases afterwards as it goes through the criminal justice process?
We're able to track and search with Premier One, but we send everything and gather everything through the NICE program. That's our gateway out to the district attorney's office that coordinates all that evidence together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Legislator Pila.
Commissioner, thank you so much. I would like to thank you, the entire team, for a great job you are doing. Also, I would like to thank the community advocate group. It's amazing to see, like, we all want the same things. We want a safe community. We want to help each other. At the end of the day, it's all about how we can work together to improve and create a safe environment to all our residents. My question, I have a couple of questions. The first one, I would like to know, you mentioned 12,000 people registered to take the test, you said?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I would like to know which kind of preparation or resources your department is providing for them in order for them to succeed on the test.
To actually show up for the test? Mm-hmm. So civil service designs and does the test with our influence on it, not as far as the actual test, but overseeing with the company. There's a private company that designs the test. Then a date is picked, and then the date is January 5th, 6th, 7th. There's a couple of dates out there because people can't make it, and there's exceptions for military if they're excused or away. And once that date is picked, we, through our mentoring program, when a young man or woman signs up for the test, they know who the mentoring programs is. So if you want to go through the Hispanic Society, you want to go through the Guardians, whatever program, the Holy Name Society, Animal Society, you have mentors that you could reach out to and say, listen, I got an opportunity to take this test. I paid and everything, but I can't get there. You know, can you help me get there? Or I don't have the $150 to pay for it. And we help them prepare waivers with civil service to get them exempt from paying the $150. So, but actually on the day of the test, we don't provide services on the day of the test. It's not provided by the police department. Obviously, it's at the Coliseum, so public transportation is accessible to that location, and that's what for those who can't get there by their own personal vehicle, public transportation is available.
That's wonderful, but I would like to know, in terms of the materials, like what are you giving them so they have the chance to go over the test or preparation, before they come into the test?
Yep. So, John Berry there? There we go. So John Berry's legal counsel. He's also involved in the preparation for the test.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So the vendor, Talogy, that is writing the test for the police department exam, they provide a study guide for them that is pushed out through the civil service. I don't know the specifics of it, but they give them things to look at to study.
I see, but there is not any preparation in terms of like the police department doesn't have some courses just to go over the material, like anything else in life. Before test, you have to get some material. You need somebody to help you to go through the process, because the goal is for them to be successful. Am I right?
But the problem becomes, is there a bias that we're only selecting certain people, or it's just this kid or that? Why didn't this kid know about it or the opportunity? We're not in the test-taking business, right? Mm-hmm. But we've gone, again, above and beyond to make sure that we can get kids. We are in the recruitment business, and we did very, very well in the recruitment side of things. But the actual test, we have to be careful because, again, it is a test given by a private company through civil service. That's why, as John just said, we don't look at the material. I don't know question 1 is or question 5 is, because obviously there'd be that hint of impropriety.
They prepared the test, so they would know how best to study for it.
I got you. I think going forward, again, I did my degrees and everybody went to go through like tests in life. It would be nice, I'm not saying to give them exact questions, but some kind of guidelines, like what's their expectation, what they should learn. I think if we're going to provide something like this, we're going to increase the chances to have more diverse policing in our county. That's my advice.
No, and that's exactly why we formed the mentoring groups. They're independent of the police department. They're fraternal. They're not being paid by me to do something or go. So if somebody takes advantage of that, just like you take advantage of reading the study guide, some people won't read that guide. Some people never reach out to a mentor. It's just the way, and some people won't prepare that day and then forget to show up. And but we've gone giving them options. If they use the mentoring program, there is an advantage there.
I got you. Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to go back to the incident hate crimes report you have here. Reported incident, I think for 2023 so far, anti-Jews is 12, and then there is incidents found to be criminals 12, and arrest is 0. I'm trying to understand the number here. Incident found to be criminal. Can you give me an example of those incidents, what they look like?
So most likely on the Jewish side of it, it's a swastika painted on a wall. It happens at a playground. It happens in school in a bathroom. It happens on a desktop. The report comes in, we take it. It is criminal, just the nature of it. But finding that person becomes very difficult because sometimes they've been around for weeks, months, and sometimes they were just done and there's nobody that saw it.
I see. Okay, and my last question regarding bail reform, and with all the good intention, really, they passed this bill. I would like to understand a little bit, in your opinion, how much cashless bail cost for our county in terms of policing and manpower? And also, I would like to know, with repeat offenders, what is your experience with your department in terms of arrests and danger to our community? And then how many of those who are going without bail coming to the court day?
So, obviously, I can't guess on numbers, right? But I will tell you this. When it comes to bail reform, the purpose of bail is to assure that somebody comes back to court. And there was requirements to that, who you are, where you live, if you have proper ID. And then if not, sometimes they hold you to bail, and that amount of money, hopefully that will help you or remind you to come back and answer your court case. When no one has a problem with cashless bail when it comes to a rich kid over a poor kid. It shouldn't be that way. Because I got money, I can get bailed out, and you don't, you shouldn't. So, and we all agree with that, right? It's about the fairness process. Yes. But the problem with cashless bail, and we just use the analogy of the drug dealer and the drug buyer, they're both walking out. So we did nothing. Years ago, there was diversion for both of them. They'd walk in front of a diversion judge. Son, go down the hall, see the diversion judge. You'd see the diversion judge, and he would say, if you want to go get help and you sign up and you follow our program and stay out of trouble for a year, we'll wipe your record clean. That's what you should do for a drug user, right? You should get them help. And the drug dealer, he should go to jail, right? And he doesn't have a substance abuse problem, and I don't want him to use the system, but nobody ends up in front of diversion court for two months down the road now. So what's happened for that drug user in that 2-month period? He gets sick, overdoses again, and then sometimes dies. And then when you look at shoplifting goes out, people walk in, they steal, we go out, and sometimes we even do a field arrest. We'll issue the appearance ticket in the street. We'll hand it to that person. They will literally get arrested 2 hours later, 3 hours later. Happens at Roosevelt Field quite often. And unfortunately, when you see commercial burglaries and you see robberies going up, as I'm walking out with that dress shirt underneath my jacket, and the security guard confronts me, and I push him, That's the use of force overtaking that property. That just went from a larceny, which could have been a misdemeanor larceny. It could have been a $50 shirt, to a felony, a robbery, right? Because force is used in the overtaking of the property. Same happens for a repeat offender. You come back and you continue to steal in my store. You've been arrested before. I sign paperwork that says if he comes back in my store and steals, I want him arrested. He's no longer permitted in my store. And that raises that now with a trespass and a larceny makes it the burglary. So now it becomes a burglary charge. So when you look at commercial burglaries and you look at robberies, they're higher than they should be because of those two factors. So take the repeat offender that keeps going out. Arrested a gentleman last night. His last name is Christmas. No kidding. His last name was Christmas. We arrested him last night. He did, I think it was up to 9 different 7-Elevens that he's been hit before. And he just walk in, walk behind the counter, load the bag up, and walk out. And when you speak to the people in the store, I'm not confronting him because I don't want to have a problem. I don't want to get hurt over cigarettes. But he's walking out with, sometimes a couple of $1,000s worth of cigarettes. We arrested him last night sleeping in a hallway in Hempstead, the Fit Squad. But he's been out already from doing these same type of crimes. So, unfortunately, sometimes you're going to get repeat offenders, and sometimes you're not. They get it. They got caught. They're going to own up. They're going to do whatever has to happen, pay the fine down the road, and that's usually what happens. Nobody goes to jail for shoplifting. But that repeat offender who does not want to stop doing it because there is no penalty, there's a cost to you and me because I got to spend the resources there. And when my resources are processing the guy for the 3rd time in a week, and then somebody has a heart attack down the block, I can't get there. I can't get, and there's a robbery in the mall, I can't get there. The county exec has given us lots of resources. No holds barred when it comes to doing what we need to do to protect people. But you just can't produce cops. You can't just say, hey, put more cops there. That doesn't fix your problem, right? Bad guys will find a way around it. The system with the bail reform has hurt us in the fact that there's no penalty. And again, there's a lot of good in bail reform. I'm never going to say it either way. But I think that in the overall process, there's a cost factor to us as the residents here in Nassau County. There's a cost factor to me as the police department because I'm out processing arrests. I average 40 arrests a day in this county, 40. The majority of them are either drugs or shoplifting. Those are the two biggest things. Misdemeanor drugs, not drug dealers with a half ounce of cocaine. Guys getting caught with a couple of bags of coke or some crack on them. And the same goes with shoplifting. My guys, we have 10 extra officers assigned to the mall. They're out of service several times a day processing arrest. And then we got to give them an appearance ticket, and they go back into the system. They go back into the same mall. That's a problem for us.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
God bless you doing this. I mean, that would drive me crazy, to be quite honest with you. Thank God I'm not a police officer. But just to piggyback on legislative appeal, I know that with the training and trying maybe to help a lot of the candidates better understand how to take the civil service test to be a police officer. I know that just from my experience with my sons who took civil service exams in New York City, I know that for the police department, they had classes that the candidates could go to. I don't know who gave them. It wasn't the city, and maybe they hired another company. But maybe it's something we can look into, like they could work with the mentors, the independent mentors. Maybe they can find out and maybe come up with a plan on so that the candidates have a better understanding of what's expected on the test.
100%, and but I apologize. It just can't. We did do it. I'm sorry. We did. We did it at the academy. We had 150 people show up. That was it. Yeah. And then we did it again in a house of worship down in Uniondale. And then we did it another time at the academy.
Right. You can't make them. I mean, it's like, yeah. You have to talk to their mothers, and then you'll get all the kids. They'll drive them and drag them so that they can get a job. But just a quick question, just to go back. Like, I know that when we talk about the reporting, and thankfully we don't have a lot of complaints about the police using excessive force, which is good. But if somebody gets, like you said, you could handcuff somebody. If somebody, like, say they arrest somebody and the person says, I feel dizzy, I feel nauseous.
Right to the hospital.
Oh, okay. So
No
actually
hesitation.
that is something that is reported, that you have a record of that complaint, or
You know, I apologize for not having that number because it's a great number to show you. I will tell you this, that I probably spend 50% of my arrests go to the hospital because they all say I have something wrong with me. And maybe they do. I don't know. I'm not the doctor. I'm not the medical expert, nor is my cop. So take them to the hospital every single time. Ask NUMC. We're loaded up in the emergency room.
Okay, and they probably love you for that, but that's good. I was just thinking about that because I know, like, if you have an interaction with them, but sometimes, like, somebody does something and then all of a sudden they don't feel well, and I didn't know whether or not you report that so I'm glad to hear that you actually take that step in bringing them to seek some sort of medical attention. Part of the police reform plan actually was also with the 911 Bureau. I know that they are the initial call, and the records for the calls coming in, that's included in this report as well,
Yes.
correct? And we have enough 911 operators. I know that with working with the diversion and with the mental health component,
911 operators, like our medics, we're always chasing, and because of retirements. And it's a tough spot for the 911 operators. They do a great job. It's a tough job. And many times we're asking those after almost being here 15 months, you're not going to work out, you got to go. So it just happens that way. But we just hired a bunch of more medics, and we just hired a bunch of CB operators. But we have numbers that are our standard, and when certain things are going on, we can't mandate them in, we can't order them in, but we can put up that overtime for them to come in and do it.
all right, because I know that I think to a certain degree I have to agree with the legislators to my left, actually, in regard, trying to get access. It's not your fault, because I tried to make a visit to the 911 Bureau, but was never given permission, which is odd, being the chairwoman of the Public Safety Committee. But I know that had I been able to ask you directly, I know that I wouldn't have had any issue with that. But even so, we've had some, pushback even from previous administrations in trying to make visits. So it's not just something that's inherent with the current administration. But I have to say that I do appreciate the work that you have been doing, and I do agree with my fellow legislators. For us, data is important. We need to be able to have benchmarks, to be able to see where everything, if we're working on something, how are our police departments working? Any department, we need to know to make sure that everybody is doing the right thing. And then, of course, our police department is a very key, critical component of life here in Nassau County. So, and I do appreciate the numbers in the reports that you've given us so that we could take a look at to see what is happening, who's being stopped, why are they being stopped, what happens after that fact. What do you do with the mental health? Like that you do work with the MCTs and that you do bring them to the hospitals. And I appreciate also that we're able to now to see a better outcome in regard to the body cameras. That it makes it easier for you to look at how a police officer handles a call. How, in real time, you can actually see how they are responding to somebody, whether or not somebody's kind or somebody's belligerent. Like, what is their response to that? And I think it's very, very important. And while we do look at these reports, for me, I think that my benchmark a lot of times comes from my public, from my constituents. How do they feel about the police department? Do they feel, and I think that this is the reality. When we look at numbers, that is the actual factual reality. But then there's also a balance of a perception, that, many of my residents would not even think about asking, the reports or the arrests or anything. They just want to know that, is there an officer close by? And I have to say that and even at the last minute, when I ask to see if an officer can come to a last-minute civic meeting, all of a sudden, yes, that officer is there, and being able to deal with the public, even if, sometimes the public isn't always very happy, they may be angry. So I think that is something very key, and I think that the officers are well-trained in that respect because, people do shout things at them. They don't mean to, but they get so angry. And I spoke to you about the one officer with the long Italian name. I'm not going to hazard that name again, but he showed up to show support, and the next thing you know, he was bombarded with questions and never lost his cool, and actually was quite kind to so many of the residents, and they really appreciated the way that he conducted himself. And I think that is a testament, as to how the training is, and to the administration, you and all of your staff that sits there, when you oversee a lot of these young people, and we have so many young people that are on the police force right now. So, I think that as long as we can keep getting this, and I know that we know from 2020 to 2021, 2022, and now the end of 2023, that there has been an improvement, that you have been. You go out, you meet with the community leaders, you meet with the church leaders, you meet with the religious leaders, you meet with anybody that requests a meeting, so that you have a better understanding of what the neighborhood needs and what a certain community needs. And with the changing demographics here in Nassau County, like we're going from one type of ethnic group, and we have so many, you have such a variety of different ethnicities, and I think that that's very, very important as you try to balance that, and even trying to incorporate the officers in. So, for me, I do want to thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you and with all of you in regard to this. And I think that I have to say, for my committee, I think we did a pretty good job working with you and with everyone else in regard to establishing a police reform plan that was sent to the State Attorney General and was accepted by her, without any changes, without any negative comments. And even so, we take a look at this, and maybe we're not getting the outcomes that some people would like, but I think overall, I think that we are a very sincere group, and I think that moving forward, that the new Public Safety Committee probably will continue, I think, the fine work that all of us have done in regard to this committee, and I think they all will look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
So I thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you all.
And although public comment is over, we just have one more slip, if it's all right, and then we'll end the committee. We'll end this hearing. So I'm asking Cheryl Keshner.
Good afternoon. My name is Cheryl Keshner. I'm a Nassau County resident and work for the Empire Justice Center, but I'm here speaking on behalf of the Long Island Language Advocates Coalition, which I coordinate. Thank you for the presentation on police reform, Commissioner Ryder, and thank you to the legislature for holding this hearing. I wanted to express concern about the continuing disproportionate numbers of arrests, traffic stops, searches, and use of force against Black and Latino drivers and pedestrians. This is incredibly important to address and to ensure that a continuing bias does not occur within the department, and then there can be greater trust established with communities of color. Within the issue of bias, language access is a major piece. We know that there are a large number of newly arrived immigrants, as well as immigrants who have been here for many years, and 22.8%, according to the most recent the most recent census, are foreign-born in Nassau County, and so the department needs to be prepared to be able to address that. Over the years, LILAC has brought to the attention of the department many of the concerns that we've had. We've done continued testing and have heard many complaints from the community regarding concerns that they've had when they've been unable to get assistance in their language, which has had a huge impact on their ability to file complaints, to get the appropriate response from the police, and to emerge from very traumatic situations without experiencing greater trauma. I am deeply disturbed by the report by Detective Sergeant Gregg today, which only referred to language line usage as well as definitions of hate crimes. Hate crimes, yes, is a very major issue which needs to be addressed. The hate crimes pamphlet, which is available on the department website, is only available in English. That needs to be available in multiple languages. The number of hate crimes that are reported are extremely low, particularly in the Hispanic and Asian communities, and I think that speaks to the lack of language access as well as the lack of trust established with those communities. The department's language access plan needs to be available on the website, which it is not at the current time, and it needs to be expanded as well as summarized in various languages so that people understand what their rights are and what to expect from the department. There needs to be greater training, and officers should not be allowed to assess their own proficiency, which is something that has been a continuing problem over the years. In addition, children should never be used as interpreters. I know it does state in the plan that they should not be used in highly stressful situations, but this puts children in very difficult and traumatic situations, often inappropriate type of situations, where they're being used to interpret in domestic violence incidents and other situations which they should not be in the middle of, and they often do not possess the appropriate language skills. At present, there was recently filed a federal lawsuit against the department because of their language access shortcomings, and so we know this has been going on for years. I'm glad that the department is increasing its number of audits, but it's unfortunately too little too late. So we look forward to seeing greater improvements within the department in terms of addressing language access as well as bias overall. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate everybody coming here.
I do. Should I have the right to respond?
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So first of all, we go round and round, Cheryl and I, and I get it, and she's passionate about what she does, and I respect that. Detective Sergeant Sabrina Gregg is the best that Nassau County has to offer. I am telling you the work and the passion behind what she does every single day. She does audits off and on. Constantly, every couple of weeks, there's a new audit that comes down. And when somebody is found wrong, we address it ASAP. Not like when I asked, Cheryl, that if you find somebody doing it wrong, let me know. Here's my cell phone. Call me so I can address it. I'm speaking now, so I can address it then. And that's what I want to do. And when we talk about transparency, we are transparent. We give it all. They did a report, which they filed a lawsuit, but they won't give us the report, so I can't fix the wrongs that are out there. But again, and the policy is on the county website. It is up there for the world to see. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Yes, Sergeant Gregg. You have to go to the mic. I'm sorry.
Very quickly, the PDC.org, that website has multiple languages. There's a little Google Translate that if maybe that was where there was some confusion, that you can, someone who speaks, that has 251 languages that you're able to change the language to. And as far as the bias flyer, we just got translation in 6 top non-English spoken languages in the bias flyer that will be attached to the website as well. So.
And thank you. And that's the Stop the Hate, right?
Yes.
That we'll work together with you on that as well, right? Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate you coming out. Thank you, Commissioner, and everybody. Have a very good holiday and a Happy New Year. Take care. Bye.